So, like I said, they put on this diagram anterior vena cava. It should be superior, but I think you guys just need to know that it's one. So our blood, deoxygenated blood, is coming from our body into our vena cava. So it's coming from the top half of our body into that one, and the bottom half of our body into this one. Okay? It's going into our right atrium. All right? Then it's going through this, which we haven't talked about yet, but it's a valve, so we'll talk about that in a minute, into our right ventricle. Remember, it's still deoxygenated. Perfect. Then it's going up here into our vessel, which is our pulmonary artery, and it's going towards our lungs. So let's just say it's going this way. Remember, this is a complicated diagram. Okay? So it's going towards our lungs up there. Now it's going to be oxygenated in our lungs, and let's come back down. So now our blood's here, it's oxygenated, it's coming into our pulmonary veins, and it's coming into our left atrium. All right? It's going down into our left ventricle, and then it's going up into our aorta. So in this diagram, we'll just have to go across the pulmonary artery into our aorta, and don't worry about all the little vessels coming off at the top. You guys don't need to know about that, okay? Remember, because your aorta is going to the rest of your body, so obviously it splits into smaller and smaller vessels. So, remember, left side of your body, pulmonary vein, aorta, PVA glue. Remember it like that. So we're coming into our vena cava, right atrium, right ventricle, out of our pulmonary artery to our lungs, into our pulmonary vein, left atrium, left ventricle, out to our aorta to the rest of the body. Okay? Really important, guys, that you know which vessels are on either side, okay? And if they're arteries or veins, okay? So just try and remember that step. Vena cava, right atrium, right ventricle, pulmonary artery, lungs, pulmonary vein, left atrium, left ventricle, aorta, body. Okay, and try and remember it as the loops that we did at the start of the lesson. Okay. Now, what I think we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about the valve, and let's see if we can get an exam question. Because I know it's a little bit longer. Does anyone need a quick 2-minute break? Just grab a drink or anything, or is everyone all right? I can't see everyone. Is everyone all right to just carry on? We've only got 15 minutes left. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So let's just carry on. So what we have now, let me just delete all my drawings. Has everyone got notes down that they wanted to, or any drawings they wanted to do? Yeah, right, I'm going to delete my drawings. Okay. Let's just do the right side of the heart just for now. The left and the right side, it's the same. Okay, we'll talk about it. So we've come in, let's just do our superior vena cava. We've come into our vena cava, we're in the right atrium. Okay. Now to get through into the right ventricle, we need to go through a valve. So remember, valves allow one-way movement, okay? So they allow movement from the atrium to the ventricle, but they don't allow it from the ventricle into the atrium back, okay? And when we talk about the heartbeat and the movement of the heart, that will become important, okay? So there's a valve there, okay? And you guys just need to know, we might talk about them in a bit more detail, that they're just called the AV valve. So really easy to remember. AV valve, atrioventricular valve. So you can see it's here. Okay? Easy to remember, it's between the atrium and the ventricle. Atrioventricular. They couldn't have named it better, could they? Easy way to remember. So there's one on that side of the body, of the heart, sorry, on the right. I remember blood's coming in on the left side and it's doing the exact same. Okay, I think I might use this brown because it's a bit easier to see. Okay, and we've got another AV valve, atrioventricular valve. Okay, they do each have their own names, but I don't think you need to know them. I'll double check. If you do, we'll quickly do them. Okay, so I'll tell you what they're called now. So the one on the right side of the heart is called the tricuspid valve, okay? And the one on the left side of the heart is called the bicuspid valve. But I think you guys just need to know AV valve. Okay, but I'll double check that. All right. So we've got those valves. So then remember the blood is in the right ventricle and it's also in the left ventricle, and it moves up into our vessels. So it's moving up into our pulmonary artery and up into our aorta. And it's got, if I delete all my drawings, we've got another valve here. So we've got one here on the right side of the heart, and we've got one here. It's kind of hidden away a little bit on this diagram on the left side of the heart. And these are called our semilunar valve. Okay? They don't have another name. So AV valve between the atrium and the ventricle, semilunar between the ventricle and the artery that's going out. Okay? And they help to prevent backflow. Okay? So they're really important. So let's talk about how blood moves within the heart. I think that's what we'll finish on with this lesson. Okay, so one second, guys. I need to just stop and make sure my laptop is not going to right now. No, it's not. Sorry, guys. Okay, so we've talked about this. So let's just do, it's easy if we just do one side of the heart. So I think we'll do the right because it's easier to see on this diagram, isn't it? So I'm going to use brown as my blood moving. Right. So we've already talked about the veins. They've got valves in. So let's say our blood's coming from our arms. Okay. So Sarah, you've been doing a bit of boxing. All right. Your blood's, remember, your muscles contracting, move, valve stop going backwards. All right. So now you've done so much boxing, blood's come back into your heart. Because it's from your arms, it's come from the top. So we're coming into our superior. So blood comes into here, just naturally, through movement and things like that. But eventually it will get in there. Okay. So now our blood is in our atria. So if you think about your heartbeat, have you ever heard it being described as lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub? Have you ever heard of it being described like that? Yeah. So there's two parts to it. There's lub and there's dub. All right. So what happens? We've got blood that's in our ventricle. All right. This valve only allows blood to go from our atrium. Sorry, we've got blood in our atrium. Sorry, mixed up. Blood in our atrium. Okay. This valve only allows blood to go from our atrium to our ventricle. Okay. So you can see that our atrium is on top of our ventricle. So naturally, if there's blood in our atrium, it's going to naturally just flow into here without any contraction of our heart. Okay. What happens is blood just naturally flows just through gravity into our ventricle. Okay, now the first part of our heartbeat, lub, is your atria contracting. Okay, so what happens is blood enters into our atria. Okay, our atria contract. So this happens simultaneously on both sides of the heart, but we're just going to be talking about the right just for simplicity. Okay, so now our blood is going to be forced through our valve into our ventricle. Okay, so our atria is contracted. And that's because your atria is contracted, you've decreased the volume in your atria, so you've increased the pressure and you've forced blood out of the atrium into your ventricle. Okay, makes sense so far? Yeah, perfect. Okay. So now we want to increase. Okay, great. So now we want to get blood going into either our pulmonary artery or our aorta, because we want it to go to the rest of our body or our lungs. Now, that's the whole point. So we've got all our blood in our ventricle. So what happens next is our ventricles contract. Okay, so we get increase in pressure in our ventricles. So blood is going to be forced up through this valve into our artery. Okay. But blood doesn't know where to go. It's just going at the path of least resistance. Okay, where there's least resistance. Okay. So blood naturally, if I delete all of my arrows, is going to naturally want to go back into our atrium. Okay, because we just got rid of all our blood in there. All right. There's going to be loads of space for blood. But our valve prevents our blood going back into our atrium. Okay. So it wants to go back into our atrium because our ventricle is now under really high pressure and our atrium's under low pressure. So anything naturally, if you think of diffusion, wants to go from high to low, but the valve stops that. So now blood is just forced up into our arteries. Okay? So you have lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. Okay. But if you think you have lub dub, gap, lub dub, gap, lub dub, gap. So your heart has a little bit of a rest, doesn't it? Okay. So when your heart's a little bit of a rest, again, if I clear my diagram, we've got blood now here. Let's just draw one little red blood cell. Okay. So we've just had the dub, and at the end of dub, our blood's just there. Okay. It's going to fall under gravity, isn't it? And it's going to try and fall back into our ventricle once the heart's at rest. What's going to stop that? The semilunar valve is going to stop it falling back into our ventricle. Okay? So it's just going to stay there until the next dub where it gets forced out again. Okay? So remember, this is happening simultaneously on both sides of the heart. Okay? So let's just recap that, guys. So blood, remember, Sarah's been boxing. It's come into a superior vena cava. Okay? But also, remember, it's happening on the other side of the heart. It's going to come into her pulmonary veins, okay? And it's going to enter her left and right atrium, okay? The atrium is going to contract, increase the pressure, and force blood through the atrioventricular valves into your ventricles, okay? Then your ventricles are going to contract and force blood up into your arteries, so your pulmonary artery on your right side of your heart and your aorta on the left. But blood's going to try and go back into your atria because that's where there's low pressure, but the atrioventricular valves stop your blood going back in. Okay, so then your blood goes into your arteries. When your heart's now at its resting stage after the lub dub, your bloods want to go and fall back into your ventricle, but it stopped doing that by your semilunar valve. Okay? So the valves are really important within your heart. They prevent backflow. Okay? Let me just see if I had another diagram here. No, so that's a bit more about the cardiac cycle. We'll talk about that. Okay. So what I think we'll do, guys, is we'll take just 10 minutes or so and let's have a look, see if we can find some questions on some stuff we've talked about. So I know I've got a question on blood vessels. Let's talk about that. And then next lesson, someone, I can't remember who it was, sorry, asked about specialised cells. So maybe, again, it's going to be an hour and a half. So we'll do half an hour on specialised cells, and then we'll do a bit more on the heart and the cardiac cycle and things like that. Okay, right. So give me just a second to get up our thing. Oh, it was Salma. Perfect. So we'll split the lesson in half. All right. So I have got some questions. So let me just get them up. Okay. So 1 second, guys. I'm really sorry. I just need to go and grab my laptop charger really quick because I think it's going to run out. So it'll just be a second. We'll just